So good for you to join us, Jen. Jennifer Huygen from Community Leisure UK. Head of Policy and Strategic Partnerships. Can you tell us a little bit about CL UK and what you do and what this is all about?
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for involving me. We're really, really happy to support EmployAbility Leisure. So we are a membership association. We work with charities and social enterprises in the public leisure and culture sector, and we refer to them as leisure and culture trusts. We work across England, Scotland, and Wales. And because we are a membership association, one of our, strategic objectives, as you would call them, is to ensure that our members are sustainable and resilient organizations. And of course, a big part of that is equality, diversity, and inclusion, making sure that they are inclusive of the communities that they actually work with. So we've been having a lot of different conversations around equality, diversity, and inclusion. We've covered topics like disability inclusion, but also around workforce diversity, concession policies, women and girls as well, just to make sure that we cover everything really. There's new guidance, but generally the whole push towards employability leisure is going to be really important in terms of actually knowing what actionable steps organizations can take. And I think that is, I know we'll get into it a little bit deeper, but I'm really excited about this guidance and what it can do for our sector and providing that little bit more support and structure that we need.
Amazing. So good to have CL UK's kind of involvement and backing. And employability leisure guidance, does that really fit in with where your members are at and what they really require at the moment with regards to disability?
Yeah, I think so, because one of the conversations that we've had with our members is that they're obviously very keen to do the right thing. And to be inclusive towards everyone and accessible as well. But one of the main barriers that members have shared with us, and I found that really brave of them to admit that actually one of the things that they will need to overcome within their organizations is to be able to have the conversation with their staff and their workforce about diversity, because they are afraid to offend people or to offend staff members. They feel like they need to have a legitimate purpose almost to ask about, do you have a disability or do you need additional support? And so actually I think this, the new guidance will actually really help with having that conversation and giving guidance and structure around communication and explaining why are we asking these questions and where do we want to go to as an organization as well.
I think the discussion around disability is often focused on participation. Where do you think we're at, and what is the role that employability leisure can play in terms of pushing the agenda, disabled people in the workforce?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I think actually there's a lot that we can learn from the participation point of view. So, leisure operators, whether that's in the public or, private sector, they will be used to being inclusive and accessible from a participation point of view because of all the health and well-being programs that they run on a daily basis. So they will feel quite confident in terms of engaging disabled people in that way. But now is the question of actually translating that to actually being a fully inclusive organization, because you can be really good from your participation point of view, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is in place in terms of that inclusive culture as an organization. And I think this is where employability leisure as a wider initiative can really open up that conversation within this sector, saying we're doing really well on participation on this front, but now let's reflect back internally, what does that mean for us as an organization? And I think the guidance that is coming out today is really, really helpful because of that checklist that is there at the start. And I love that checklist because it's right at the start and it will allow you to actually check and challenge the work that you do and just go to the relevant sections that you will need to just reflect on your work, to adapt your work. But also, very honestly, if you need to start afresh, you can because of that checklist and that guidance that is there.
Yeah, the employability leisure guide, it has so many amazing kind of practical implementable elements to it. Really good that you mentioned the checklist within there. I think there's one element that has really struck me, and you've mentioned this inclusive culture. Starting from the top, What's the role that you think chief executive senior leadership can kind of play to push disability in the workforce?
I think they have a really important role to play because they're the leaders within their organization. They need to show that they care and that the organization cares and will put in the support and will be able to have an honest conversation within the organization. This is what we're doing well, but this is potentially what we're not doing well yet. And, this is difficult sometimes to admit we're not doing this well, but, we will adapt and we want to have a conversation with you, our staff, to actually improve. And one of the things that was really reassuring to me working with so many members across the UK is that when we started our ED&I work a year and a half ago, I can't quite remember when we started to really put it as a real focus with dedicated workshops, one of the things that we never had to do was to explain why we're focusing on equality, diversity and inclusion. It was a relief for members that we were providing a space for them to network, to share examples, to ask the silly questions, and to be reassured that there is support and guidance out there for them, to reflect on their work and to improve where needed.
Yeah, it's such a really crucial, important element of the debate and the conversation around equality, diversity, inclusion. Let's get this out in the open. Let's have the discussion. No silly questions, as you mentioned, for us to kind of progress. So EmployAbility Leisure, got these amazing resources and the guides sort of being published. You've mentioned the checklist. I love the bit about senior leadership, the benefits of having an inclusive culture. Is there a particular element that's really caught your eye and your interest within the guides?
Yeah, there's many different elements, and literally every chapter to me I found inspiring, and I know that I will go back to many of the sections just for myself to help guide my own work with members and in the sector working with partners as well. But I think for me there were three sections really that really spoke to me. So one of it is, of course, the checklist, which I already mentioned, but also the reason why I love the checklist so much is not just because it helps you check your work, but also because it's themed across, 3 different themes. So it's wider strategic planning as an organization. It is preparing the workforce, having that conversation, but also looking at policies and plans as an organization. So really you can quickly see where you as an organization want to learn and then go to that section, which I think is really helpful. The second bit, and I think we've mentioned it during this conversation, but really important to stress is that inclusive culture as an organization. And that is something that came out of the workshops that we've been doing in the past few months really quite strongly, is that, you can have a diverse workplace that is potentially representative of your community, but that doesn't mean that you are inclusive in the way that you operate. So there's a risk that the way that you operate may be tokenistic if you don't have that truly inclusive culture as an organization. And that is why if you get inclusion right, you will get diversity right, and that will happen more holistically as well. And I think that is such an important message that this guidance stresses, but also that it gives actionable objectives on as well, and to help guide organizations. The final point, and I'm conscious that I'm basically just giving you a whole summary of the guidance here, but the final point that I do really want to stress is that there are a couple of sections in there that are about making job roles more accessible, looking at the day-to-day work that you do and how to potentially make changes there, but also looking at general workplace practices that you can reflect on and potentially make changes if needed. And when I was reading through the actions in those sections, I was thinking, actually, I would really like that. I don't consider myself to be a disabled person. I don't identify as a disabled person. But for me, looking through that guidance, I think if organizations, if employers put all of that into practice, their organization will be so much better for everyone. And actually the health and well-being of all of their staff, whether those are disabled people or non-disabled people, they will feel supported and valued in the organization.
Jen, what an amazing sort of point to end on. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.